Now let's create the door. But before we create the door, it is better to memorize certain details or informations related with doors. So here you can see that a door has got basically two components. One is the door frame, another one is the door shutter. And the door frame has got a width of 5 centimeter and it has got a thickness of 10 centimeter. The thickness is the surface that is going inside, and the door shutter has got a thickness of 2.5 centimeter. Now let's go back to our drawing by keeping in mind these measurements. Now I'll take you to wireframe representation. Now we'll create the door frame first. But before we make the door frame, we have to create the door frame as well as the shutter in respective layers, because for the frame as well as for the shutter we will be giving different materials or finishes. So I'll go to layer properties manager and I'll create two new layers. One is called 3D door frame, and the next one I'll call as 3D door shutter. And for the 3D door frame, I'll give a color of say this 21, the color number, and we'll go to the door shutter layer again, and for the door shutter layer I'll give a different color. Let it be this particular shade. Okay, now I'll give the door frame layer current. I'll keep this layer as a current layer. Now I'll go to polyline and I'll start tracing the polyline along the periphery of the door. Then I'll give an offset command of 5 centimeter, because we have seen that the door frame has got a width of 5 centimeter. Now I have to connect these two endpoints. I'll connect these two endpoints as well as these two endpoints with polylines. Now let's make it a single profile. So I'll go to P-edit, polyline edit, last, polyline is selected. So when I type L, the most recently drawn one will get selected. This has got selected. Now you can give join, and I'll select these polylines to be joined along with the existing polyline. So I have selected all these polylines. Now you have got a message that 7 segments were added to polyline. That means you have got a single polyline profile. Now you can extrude this profile in the negative Z axis direction through a distance equal to the thickness of the frame. And I gave extrude command. Now when I'm asked to give the thickness, I'll give -10, because that is the thickness of the frame. So we have made the door frame. Okay, now let's create the door shutter. But for that you have to make a door shutter layer current. Then I'll just trace a profile inside the polyline. I'll start tracing the profiles from here to here, and I'll go straight up, and I'll come back to this point and I'll give close. Now I'll extrude this profile through a distance of -2.5, because that is the thickness of the shutter. So even the shutter is extruded. Now when you give shade, you can see that there is this particular door is not very realistic. That's because the plane of the shutter, the plane of the frame, and the plane of the wall is coinciding. They are all in the same plane. So you have to give a proper positioning of these objects. So what I'll do is I'll move this shutter along the frame inward in the negative Z axis direction through a distance equal to the frame thickness minus shutter thickness, that is 10 minus 2.5. So I'll just move this. You can either give select the base point here and you can give a distance of say 7.5, which is 10 minus 2.5, or else you can select this as the base point and you can keep the second point here. Now the shutter is moved inward along the thickness of the frame. Now you can see the change when you shade it. You can see the recess of the frame here. Now this door is actually opening in inward. It is getting opened inward. So you have to move the entire door assembly inward along the thickness of the wall. So that is the next step. So I'll give, say, move, and I'll select both the frame as well as the shutter. Then you keep this as the base point and you keep this as a second point, which is the point inside the thickness of the wall. Now the entire door is moved inward along the thickness of the wall. Now you can shade it. You can see the change. Now this is the actual positioning of the door. Now in fact you don't have to create any designs on this shutter, because we will be giving the realistic finish of the shutter by assigning a photograph of the shutter on the shutter plane. That we do that in 3D Max. So you don't have to create anything here. So this is how you make a 3D door in AutoCAD.